Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Monday, September 8th, 2025, and land ownership, well, that's only for the United Nations or First Nations via the United Nations. Haida Gwaii has been declared First Nations land, and nobody really knows what that means. They're including all of the personal land, private property as well. And so, again, nobody really knows what that means. So it's really, really strange. And I'll have that for you today. Government surveillance and speed cameras. So in Hamilton, the government is saying privacy laws say you can't record people off your property, but the government can record you on a roadway. How are speed cameras legal if privacy laws are the way Hamilton says they are? And so I've got somebody talking about that, and I think it's a good argument. Trade with India and the United States, just dealing with evolutions in that. And India is partnering with, I think it's Russia, but they're creating more trade deals that the United States may not like. The whole BRICS bipolar order is coming to fruition, and it's biting a little bit, and I don't know how the United States is going to respond, because it's not like the BRICS people are hiding it, I don't think. Trump and autism and RFK Jr. Yesterday I said there was going to be a report tying Tylenol to autism, and I said I thought it would be more vaccine heavy. Today I think the vaccine stuff drops, and so I've got RFK Jr. talking about that a little bit historically, and Trump talking about more stuff to roll out. So interesting times, just with regards to the what they're talking about with autism and the cause of autism, and even just trying to get to the bottom of it, and not having a complete like shutting down that conversation and saying, we're not sure what it is, and just stop asking, right? So it's very interesting. Rigged election in the EU, and Viktor Orban's talking about Le Pen, and he says the reason they won't let her run is because she'll win. Drone strikes against cartels in Mexico. Yes, coordinated by the United States. Yes, don't you just love this post-war mantra? It's not a war, it's drone strikes. Oh, okay, Obama, right? What? Drone strikes in Mexico. This doesn't sound like a good idea. And gun grab in Alberta, and Danielle Smith is talking about that, and she is instructing her RCMP and the police in Alberta not to cooperate with the federal gun buyback or confiscation aspect, because she says you shouldn't do that, and I agree with her. And Ice 9 and the economy. Do you know Cat's Cradle, Kurt Vonnegut? We talked about Kurt Vonnegut on one of the kitchen table talks recently. Max was talking about it, I think, and I had read Cat's Cradle, but it wasn't one of my favorites, but I understood the reference. And today I've got an interview with a financial guy, and this is from 8 years ago, and he lays out what the plan is. And holy cow, very plausible, much more plausible. Where 8 years ago I wouldn't have been able to see a pathway to this outcome. Now I can see the pathway clearly, and I can see Grandma's house on the other side of the pathway. Like, the pathway is very, very clear. I can see it. It's almost a straight path, and they've made a sidewalk. Like, holy smoke, right? Before, totally gone. I couldn't see the pathway. Now I can't miss it, right? And so there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We were going to start with the Ice 9 stuff, but I think we have to talk about the invasion in Canada first, and then we're going to talk about the Ice 9 stuff. Jason says, this is insane. Canada imported 36.5% of its population in the last decade, 10 years, and that's just what they tracked. And really, that's there's probably a lot more people in Canada than what we've tracked, 36%. They didn't provide the numbers for those who entered illegally because they have no idea. To put this in perspective, 5% would be huge, 10% would be a crisis, 36% is an atomic bomb going off in every major city. No country on earth, not even the United States, has the infrastructure necessary to successfully integrate this many people in such a short amount of time. And I don't think he's wrong. Tom Quiggin says the official Government of Canada charts show that 15 million people have entered Canada since the Liberals were elected in 2015. 15 million people? Holy cow, we're not a nation of 40 million, not by a long shot. These numbers are only for the temporary foreign worker program and the study permit and international mobility program, which is the really big one, which I showed you yesterday, and everybody else picked up after me, I guess. These numbers do not include, and to be fair, it was like other people broke that story the day before. So I'm not casting any shade. Everybody should be covering this story. It's the biggest story in Canada. Holy cow, I'm glad to see it, right? I'm not casting shade by any stretch. Anyway, these numbers do not include those who entered illegally through migration or those who entered illegally just by crossing the border. Canada does not track these numbers as to who stays and who left. So yeah, we're cooked. We were now we're that pizza you left in overnight with the oven on and you went to sleep because you were drunk, and you wake up and you think, it smells vaguely like pizza, but oh, I remember. Oh no. And then you look at the pizza and it's just black, right? And it looks kind of like just a black pizza. Yes, that's from experience. But other people have done it too, I'm sure, right? And anyway, Craig says, if you express a concern about this, you're racist, so just shut up and bend over and cop it, he says. Population change since 2024, and Euro area plus 8%, OECD total 16%, United States up 21%, the United Kingdom up 18%, New Zealand up 38%, Canada up 35%, Australia up 43%. And that's according to macrobusiness.com.au. That's year 2000 to 2024. And maybe that 35 is very similar to that 36% I just told you. So I don't know whose numbers to believe. Maybe they're tracking something a little different. But the whole West is importing people at a rate that is not possible to acclimatize all of these people, especially when they're culturally alien to us, completely culturally alien. It's not like we're bringing in Europeans. We're bringing in Middle Eastern people and Asian people, and they're fine and all that, but at the same time, they're not celebrating the same holidays we're celebrating, whereas European people generally, by and large, do celebrate the same holidays, speak the same languages, etc., etc., etc. Again, Middle Eastern people don't celebrate the same holidays, don't speak the same languages. Why would we choose to bring in all of these people who are culturally incompatible? It's like having a VHS VCR and you go to Blockbuster and all they have are beta VHS, and so you get a whole bunch of beta tapes, and you come home and you're mad and you're like, oh man, we've got this and we can't use it, and we've got these and we can't use it. Why does it doesn't make any sense? Why would you do that? You wouldn't do that, right? It doesn't make any sense. Why are elected officials doing that? That's exactly what they're doing. Posty says Australia and Canada is like diving off a cliff. We won World War II, says Devin Stack, who's black-pilled, and he does some interesting videos sometimes. But this is the Australia's population with European descent, 1940 to 2025. It goes from nearly 100%, and in 1987 it's down to 95%. And in 2016, it's down to 75%. And in 2025, it's down to 55%. And that's Australia. And in Canada, it is up to 95% up to 1971. By 1981, it's 90%. By 2016, it's 65%. And by 2025, it is 50%. And that's Canada. United States is 89% European heritage up to 1970, and then it starts going down to 70% in the year 2000, and by 2025 it's 51%, right? And England, actually England's a lot higher. England with population of European descent, they're still at 80%. 2025 is 80%, but I would imagine next year it's going to drop off a cliff. So yeah, it's pretty wild. An invasion is happening all across the West, and people don't seem to want to pay attention. The citizens on the ground in England are paying attention, and so you can see these flags are being put up on the flagpoles, and people are trying to express national pride and to signal to their government, we don't want to be invaded, right? We like being us. We like the flags of our country and not Middle Eastern countries and not Asian countries. And unfortunately, the government takes this as an opportunity to crush the citizen spirit, and they come and take them down. British Patriot says West Boulevard, Birmingham flies flags to unite English, Scottish, Irish, and Welsh communities. These views are unprecedented. I always loved the Welsh flag. So again, my family is from England, and my grandparents had a caravan, which is a trailer, in Wales. And so we would go when I was young in the 80s and the 90s, early 90s, and we would go and we would drive from my grandparents' place in Ellesmere Port to Wales, and like my brother and I and my cousins and everything would be able to get souvenirs and stuff. We climbed a mountain called Snay Fell, and at the top of the mountain was a souvenir shop, and in the souvenir shop you could get swords, and yeah, my brother and I got swords and these cool Welsh flags with the dragon on it, right? Because it's a cool dragon, and when you're 8 to 10 years old, that's the coolest thing you can get, other than maybe a shark tooth, which they also had. So it's one of those things, man, memories, right? So I'm glad that people are saying our heritage, our history matters, and they're reasserting that. Here is Western Standard I'm getting her name terribly wrong. The Muslim envoy person who's being paid lots of money to find problems about racism, specifically to do with Islamophobia. That's her job, which we shouldn't have somebody whose job it is to find racist people at the government level. Like, we should have people who are finding potholes. Like, that should be a job, but not finding racist people, etc. Anyway, she says she denies contact with a Muslim lobby group after conference photos emerge. No, I don't hang out with that lobby group that you caught me at with photos. I don't hang out with them. That's fake news, right? So she denies it, but the photos tell a different story. So I think that, it's very, very strange that we're spending all sorts of money to have people whose job it is to find problems, to make certain people special class of citizens. I mean, what kind of ideology do you find that in? Hey man from Venezuela, can you tell me what you think?
So everything that you are seeing now here in Canada is what happened in Venezuela 20 years ago, step by step, because it's a script from communism. Simple as like that. That's all that I can say. We come from the future, basically. Yeah. Every immigrant for Ecuador, Venezuela, or Colombia, we can tell you that this is messed up, 100%. Also,
he says this is a script from communism. Anybody from Venezuela, Ecuador, anything like Colombia, we come from the future because we have already lived through this, and it's a script from communism. These people are running a script from communism. And yes, I think that extrapolates very cleanly all across the West. I think it maps well all across the West. It's not just Canada. It's Canada, England, Germany, Australia, France, everywhere. It's everywhere. And the invasion's happening everywhere. And Germany's sick and tired of it. So here's what's going on in Germany yesterday. Germany is fighting back. Send them home. This is people in Germany chanting. Here we go. Send them home in German sounds a lot like send them home in English. I'll just point that out. I guess that's Germany. It says Germany, right? But I don't know. I don't know if it's actually Germany. A very English quarter of Germany. Okay. Here's Tommy Robinson. This is the new UK Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. And she says, those white guys, they're terrible, terrible people. She's talking about specific white people, but it's concerning as she's the new Home Secretary. Here we go.
The people that you see holding the English flag most of the time, down my neck of the woods, will be the EDL, and they are white and they are male and they're bad people, and they want to divide our communities from one another.
Right. Whose communities? Because what? Who are you talking about? Okay, let's talk about Ice 9 and the economy. This is about a minute. This is a 10-minute thing, and you should listen to the whole damn thing, because I listened to this and I thought to myself, I got to get a greenhouse. I have to get a greenhouse right now. And money that is not dependent on the government. Wow. But I just want to kind of zero in on the Ice 9 plan. He phrases it like Ice 9, the economy. And I thought that was a good analogy, and I think you'll understand how insidious this whole plan is. This is from 8 years ago, apparently. Here we go.
That their Ice 9 plan goes much, much deeper than that.
Now, you refer to their plan as Ice 9. You just said that. What does that mean?
It's a reference to the Kurt Vonnegut novel, Cat's Cradle. In the book, a mad scientist creates a new form of water molecule called Ice 9. When it comes in contact with other water molecules, it freezes them at room temperature. One drop of Ice 9 can freeze the whole ocean. And that's what these elite operatives are about to do to the world economy.
Now, can you share with our viewers exactly who these operatives are and what their ultimate goal might be?
Like I said, John, more than 189 elite agents have slowly wormed their way into leadership positions across the board. They now sit at or near the head of the IMF, the World Bank, and even our own Federal Reserve. They also control much of what happens at the central banks of China, Russia, India, Brazil, Canada, and Europe. As you know, these institutions form a kind of global superstructure. It forms a kind of snare net encircling all nations. Their leaders aren't democratically elected. They're not accountable to you and me. They're beyond the reach of government and citizens, and yet they hold the fate of the global financial system in their hands. To get a sense of how they operate, imagine an array of floating spheres. One sphere is labeled IMF. One is labeled Fed. One is labeled Bilderberg. One is labeled Wall Street. One is labeled central banks. One is labeled intelligence agencies. One is labeled media, and so on. The elites inhabit all of these spheres, and together the network forms a kind of 3D Venn diagram. As I see it, regardless of what sphere they inhabit, the elites all share the same vision: one world order, one world taxation, and one world money. All of their actions are geared toward moving that agenda forward.
Now, are you able to share the identities of these elites with our viewers?
We've identified more than 189 individuals who are, in many cases, hiding in plain sight. Regardless, they all share the same vision: one world order, one world taxation, and one world money. A short list would include Christine Lagarde, Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, IMF; Mark Carney, Governor of the Bank of England.
Whoa, right? That's a little close to home. What's Mark Carney's job now? Prime Minister of Canada, right? And so these elites, and I've said this before, are part of a cache of pieces, players, like on a chessboard. You've got your king, you've got your queen, and each one has their pluses and minuses. But instead of having a king and a queen, you've got a Mark Carney, you've got the list of these people, right? These people here, you've got them in key positions of power, and they move in different ways. Justin Trudeau has different strengths than Mark Carney, different weaknesses too. Mark Carney came in to clean up Justin Trudeau's mistake. They sacrificed Justin Trudeau's piece on the board, right? He was taken out because he was no longer effective, and they replaced him with a bigger piece, a more effective piece. And that's what this kind of goes through and describes. Worthwhile, worth your time. Links in the description, but you can see it here. Finance a lot, right? It's on X. Go check it out. Worthwhile. I put the links on CanadaPoly.com. So if you want access to the links, most of the time, I definitely try hard to put them up. Go to Canada Poly and pay for the show, and you will have access to the links. Ivanhoe says Carney's wife continues to work for the USA company. She received government contracts. Canadian government contracts or United States government contracts? She lives in the United States, and her children go to U.S. schools. It's pretty bad in Canada when the Prime Minister's wife has no association with Canada. Carney seems single, right? Like, he doesn't seem like he's actually like invested in a relationship, whereas Poilievre seems to be, the family man. Carney is bachelor who forgot to brush his teeth. Alan says, we saw in Canada, Carney got elected with the term elbows up. This is about trade. And I think that the global coordination of taking down all of the countries and having a one world taxation, one world money, all of that, I think that that's a trade goal that is being attempted by the people that he's laying out here, right? And probably other people who are unknown, right? But I think that plays into trade in a way that is kind of unseen. And then in the seen side of things, here's what's going on with India and the United States. And Lutnick is using Canada as an example, like, oh, those idiot Canadians took them a couple of months to figure out that we weren't joking. And when they realized, they smartened up-ish. Not really. Here we go.
Putin and Prime Minister Modi seem to indicate a coalescing of the BRICS. Do you see anywhere in the next month, 2 months, any type of deal or backing down to a lower rate with India?
I would expect, like you saw it in Canada, right? The Carney got elected with this term elbows up, meaning let's fight with America. They put on retaliatory tariffs. They were all bravado. And what happened? Their GDP negative 1.6%, unemployment rocketing towards 8%. And what did Carney just do? He just finally dropped his retaliatory tariffs. So I think what happens is it's all bravado because you think it feels good to fight with the biggest client in the world. But eventually, your businesses are going to say, you've got to stop this and go make your deal with America. So I think, yes, in a month or 2 months, I think India is going to be at the table and they're going to say they're sorry and they're going to try to make a deal with Donald Trump. And it will be on Donald Trump's desk how he wants to deal with Modi. And we leave that to him. That's why he's the president.
Speaking of making a
There you go. So Lutnick is saying, see those Canadians? They'll be back. They'll say they're sorry. And I think he's probably right. I mean, you've got the United States, which is a huge economy, and these companies want access to the United States and if they don't get access to the United States, it might risk their company. And so they're not going to tolerate that. They're going to tell their government what they need, right? And so Here's Cillian, and we'll talk about elections before we say goodbye to the stream. And Cillian is talking about Ireland, and it looks like they're going to try and block Conor McGregor because it looks like he's going to win, so they're going to try and block him from being able to run for president. I don't know if they can block him, but it looks like they're trying to make moves to do that. Here's Cillian. He says, Ireland's Deputy Prime Minister Simon Harris has ordered his party to block independent candidates, including frontrunner Conor McGregor, from running for president of Ireland. This is completely undemocratic. The Irish people cannot stand for this. So they're petrified of Conor. They're petrified Conor would win. Simon Harris demands all Fine Gael councillors block independent presidential candidate nominations. So I'm probably saying Fine Gael wrong, but that's the name of their government apparatus, I think. Here's Viktor Orban, and he's speaking in his native tongue. So he says what he's meaning in the tweet here a little bit. He says they don't allow MPL official, which is Le Pen, to run for office for one simple reason: she would win. Using the judiciary as a political weapon has no place in a democracy. This is the very injustice we stood up against in 1989. And so we don't want unelected people or bureaucrats at the EU dictating who can run in French elections or Hungarian elections or any other elections. And so I think that's interesting and worthwhile. This is 42 seconds. I'll read what he's saying because that's probably better. I like being as fulsome as we can be. Here we go. Here's Viktor Orban talking about this. He says, today they do not allow those rivals to run in the elections who could actually win. Le Pen is not allowed to run in the elections, even though there's no final judgment against her. There's a judgment that says at first instance that some party financing problems was committed, which can, of course, be appealed at the second instance, and there will be a judgment on this later. However, as an additional penalty, it was imposed that Le Pen cannot run in the election, and this immediately, there's no need to wait for the appeal. Oh, sorry, I missed it. However, as additional penalty, it was imposed that Le Pen cannot run in the election, and this immediately comes into effect. There's no need to wait for the appeal. Similarly, look at the second in command after Le Pen, who's almost under court proceedings, because there might be an election in France this year. Today, right, so they're using Lawcraft to shut down potential people who would win because they don't want to lose power. And that is the fundamental crux of it. They do not want to lose power. Here's Holly Doan, and she's talking about what shenanigans go on in the Canadian election, and there are many. She says access to information yielded this. Elections Canada declined to count more than 43,000 mail-in ballots. It says it received past the deadline of 6 p.m. Eastern Time, April 28th. The agency did not detail where late ballots were cast in election that saw 4 ridings go to judicial recounts. So, right? Elections Canada is just as complicit as all of the other apparatus across everywhere, like the EU, who's saying Le Pen can't run, and the other, there was a famous one, and I can't remember the name of the country, but it was recent. Slovakia, maybe. It was recent, and they just said no, he didn't win because we're going to invalidate this election and we're going to do it again, and he can't run. So this is becoming a concerning pattern, and we should probably do something about it. And with that, we have to say goodbye to the stream.